Okay. So the labor cost we are doing on some concepts of zero-based manning. We some who attended the yesterday class, we know we discussed slightly on the zero base. What is the zero base manning, right? Zero base manning means you are expecting some business to arrive, and then we will normally budget only for those peoples which are necessary to do that kind of function. So for example, in our case, we settled down for 70% occupancy, which is 5,700 room nights, and we will do it breakdown by each room, and then we will come up with all the number of covers, number of spa, number of based on our revenue budget. We will achieve at the minimum level of room nights that we will do each month, right? So the zero-based funding means that what are the number of staff that we need to achieve, that we need to serve those number of people in the hotel. So the concept of zero-based funding is always to achieve the minimum number based on your performance standard, based on your hotel standard, based on your organization setup. Some hotels may have higher number of equipments, that's why they may need lower number of people because they can do many things automations, right? But some hotels may have low number of equipments, that's why they may need higher number of people. So that's how you are doing to do zero-based manning. We will look into the Excel sheet after this. And then this is because it's a cycle business, it's a seasonal business. So you need to account for those cyclicals. Like you may have the occupancy on only one day. For example, especially on the banquet part, you may not have same business every single day. For restaurant, it may be quite flat because maybe people are mostly coming on weekends, on weekdays. You may have other business, but based on the banquet is usually on certain days is very high. Maybe you have only one function in the whole month. So you need to be careful when you are doing the budget for that. Then you have salary increment assumptions. So every year you expect the salary to be increased, right? We are all employees. We all want our salary to be increased by not every month, every year, at least every month. No, sorry. If not every month, at least every year. Yeah. If we can get every month is the best. But if we cannot get every month, at least once in a year, right? So how much the salary need to be increased? So that normally, these are the guidelines. Normally these come from your top management or from GM. Okay, how much the owners, how much they want to increase. But if let's say there is no guideline to do that, so how you are going to decide how much salary increment you are going to do? So that one way is to come up from your quick budget to see how much salary increment you can afford based on your given target. So how much you can increase? Maybe 5%, maybe 6%, maybe 10%, right? So for example, now we decided, okay, 10%, let's do at 10%. Can we reach our target? If we can reach our target, well and good. We can give 10% increase. But it's only a budget, right? We are not giving 10%. So salary increment is normally, and also, but we need to see also in the inflation factor in Myanmar. So there is an inflation factor, there is a GDP growth. GDP means gross domestic product, right, of the Myanmar. So how much is the inflation in Myanmar now? Does anybody know? What is the inflation rate in Myanmar as per central bank? You are all Myanmar, 8%. Huh? 8%. Around 8 to 10%. That's the inflation rate. So means if you want to keep the employees same in their net, so you need to increase their salary by 8% every year, right? So that's what they want. At least they want that much. So because their cost of living is increasing by 8% every year, so you should be able to increase your salary by 10%, by 8% minimum. But the inflation is not that on the January 1st the cost will increase in 10%, right? It doesn't happen like that also. It's gradual, 1% increase in every month. But you cannot increase the salary every month. So maybe you want salary to increase maybe a quarterly basis. 2% every quarter I will increase. So that your cash flow is also not going that much. You can increase half yearly as well. Okay, half I will increase in first half. After another half, I will increase another 5% based on the inflation rate again. So these are the different, because if you increase 10% on the year on the month one, your cash flow will increase a lot. But the actual inflation is not there yet, right? So, but it depends on the company policy, how many times they want to increase. What is the, and then you have performance based increase. Right, salary increment is not only on the inflation, it also depends on the performance of the employees because every company have succession plan. Your company may have a succession plan, then you gonna be promoted from assistant manager to a manager this level. So the salary increment you are doing the salary detail level of the budget, you need to ask the HR department what is the plan next year. But you cannot guarantee that this person is going to be promoted, right? The budget does not mean we are guaranteeing the person will be promoted, but we are just making an assumption. Okay, maybe this person will get promoted next year. Correct. So we're gonna be looking at this when we look at the Excel file. Then, of course, the promotion plan and turnover. It doesn't mean that every employee sitting in this room will be continue to work in the same position, same hotel forever. They may leave as well. So you need to account for your turnover also. Correct. So and then the benefits, employee benefits. So the meal cost, your uniform cost, your ferry cost, your transportation, and all depend on the number of employees. If the number of employees are changing, then these benefits will also change. So now let us look at the Excel file. The one that is I have designed. This is my design. You may have a different design as well. Okay. So here I'm usually always matching the labor with the business. So that is why you have a first layer occupancy percentage. So occupancy percentage on each month is 20%, 30%, whatever the occupancy, let's say whatever number of the occupancy we are achieving, then number of room nights, and then the number of guests in the hotel. So based on that, when we say okay, the zero-based manning, so the front office manager, do you need to have two front office manager if there are more guests? No, right? It's just one is enough. Right? But one is required. Even if you don't have a guest, you still need one, right? But receptionist, it depends on the number of people arriving. So you may need two, you may need three in high season. So you are accounting for those promotions. Now let's say somebody is going to be promoted, maybe from bellboy to a concierge. Oh, sorry, concierge. Yeah, maybe let's say there is some supervisor staff to a supervisor. So then what you need to do is you need to make it 8 again, and then increase the number of supervisors. Correct? Sorry. 2. So you are increasing, you are factoring in a promotion here. But it does not mean that this person or whoever that person might be is going to be promoted. It's just a budget. But if you don't plan the budget, then your promotions in the future will not be budgeted. You will see an increase in your labor cost, which is not budgeted by you. Correct. But and if you might have seen in the previous one, I actually factored in for another thing. Which was that? What it was that we are reducing the number of employees from 9 to 8. The reason being is maybe some people will resign also. Some new hotel will open and then the person will go to somewhere else. So you're gonna take at least, and you cannot find the person immediately. You cannot replenish the person immediately. You may need a month or 2 months break. So then the person will come back and maybe in another month. So these are just only the few examples. What you are when you are doing a budget, you need to factor in the promotions. You need to factor in the labor turnover and depend on how many people. Let's say here, what are the labor turnover rate in your hotel? How many people leave every year on an average? 5%, 10%? Huh?
10%.
10%
In a year.
in a year. So let's say if you have 17 employees, how many people will leave on an average? Like 2, right? 10%. So means that you should have a labor turnover of at least 2 people. So you are going to factor in which two are going to be more. So then you need to understand from your HR. I mean that's actually the labor cost managing is normally done by HR, right? So if you are HR or if you are a financial controller who is reviewing the budget, you're gonna ask HR, okay, last year what was the labor turnover? 10%. Okay, so means 2 employees might be leaving this year as well. What was the level of people who resigned last year? It was supervisor level, it was a junior level, it was a manager level. So wherever you have the highest turnover, so you need to factor in that in the budget also. So if most of your labor turnover is coming from housekeeping staff, then you can do housekeeping staff. But if your most of your turnover is coming from the receptionist, then you need to do receptionist. Then you cannot turn over the housekeeping because housekeeping remains the fix. There are many hotels where the labor turnover is very low, means the people don't leave because of many different reasons, right? Maybe they are happy there, maybe they are get a very high salary, maybe they have got a lot of job satisfaction, they get a lot of training, or they don't have a choice. So people may be on a bond, right? They may not be able to leave there, like so the reason can be very different. But before you plan for turnover, before you plan for the increments, before you plan for the promotions, you need to understand what are the historical changes, and what are we going to do. So if you have a succession plan and you have a promotion plan, so you can see the trend. How many people are getting promoted every year? Based on that and the promotion and what are the promotion times. Usually the companies have a fixed promotion times. It's not that every month you are going to promote somebody, right? You may be promoting somebody in October or in March. What is the annual increment times there in your hotels? January or March? Huh? April. So means that you might be doing a annual increment and promotion in April, right? In Tadenjud. You want to make people happy in the Tadenjud, right? Oh, sorry, Tinjan. Water festival. Yeah, after water festival or before water festival. So people may want to pay a bonus, right? Do you get bonus on the Tinjan or after in December? You don't give bonus.
This year, not sure yet.
Okay.
The last 2 years on April.
On April. Yeah. Okay. So then you are going to plan for your bonus in that month, right? Even though you are not giving that, but do you plan the bonus in the month when you are paying, or you plan it every year, every month? Every month, yeah, because you are recording your expenses every single month, right? But how much is that? That depends on the estimation or the owner's guidelines. Okay, how much you think you're gonna pay next year, right? That's why the labor cost is quite confidential. It's quite you can say sensitive, because if this sheet is in the hands of employee, they will know I am gonna get promoted in next month. But if actually not promoted, then they will resign, because they know you have budgeted for their increment, right? So so the labor cost is quite confidential in these natures, because it contains a lot of information, which is sometimes maybe like when I used to do the labor budget, my boss, she always tell me, Manish, this is utmost confidential, because sometimes you are even accounting for a change in general manager, which you know in advance. Okay, this person gonna go next year, but you have to do the budget, right? So you are budgeting for that, but you cannot tell this to the general public. My GM is gonna go next year, so the people will get upset, or people may get happy, too happy. So I will not comment on your individual situations, but this is the general idea. The first thing is you are going to do manning, headcount manning, which is normally done. So at the moment, you can see the budget is done in one sheet, but usually is done in two different sheets. One sheet only for the headcount, and another sheet for the money, because money is confidential, and headcount is normally done by the HR together with the operations. So if HR is doing with the operations, they cannot show the money or the salary, because not everybody know the salary of everybody, right? So they finalize the money. The head count, the labor cost, the cost itself is normally done by the HR and finance together. So they have a different Excel sheet for that, but it's linked and it's the same format. So if you can see here, I'm following exactly the same format as the manning here. So head count, the same heads are there in the basic pay also, right? And then I put the average salary of each person. So you are not doing the labor cost for each and individual employee. You are normally doing it by the position. So you are calculating the average salary of the position. So here you can say, okay, the last year salary, you can say last year salary, and then you can make your assumptions how much percentage you are going to increase. Let's say you are going to increase by 5%. So what was the last year? Maybe last year was 900 and then 180, 180 also, and then 225, and then 350, and then 200. Okay, 200. So here you can factor in the budget, right? Sorry, multiply by 1 plus your inflation rate. So once you formulate this, then whatever you change here, it will be automatically reflected in the each and every cell. So if tomorrow you want to change the inflation or annual salary increment to 7%, so you don't need to change each and every cell. You can always just change only one number and the other number will follow immediately. Correct? So when you are making the budget, make sure you link the formulas. And you never do the calculation here like this, no? Don't do the calculation like, okay, into 1.05. Don't do like that. Otherwise, we have to change everything each and every time one by one. So better make it one. If it's a common formula, then make it in one file and then do like this. Usually, the assumptions you should have a separate file, one file for all the assumptions. So how much salary increment gonna be there, how much gonna be the inflation, how much is going to be the room nights, how much is going to be the number of days in the month, and then all the files here. For example, here I am linking with the number of months, but to calculate the occupancy, right? But if you want to put in, but each and every sheet will have to follow the same. Each and every file I have to multiply them from the same sheet. And if there is a change in the occupancy, then I have to go and change in each and every individual file, like rooms, like we did the occupancy budget of the F&B. We did the F&B budget, right? We are using the same occupancy number there also. So instead of putting the occupancy number in each and individual sheet here, why not create one sheet which have all these numbers in one sheet, and then everything else is linked to this sheet. So then if you have a change in the occupancy number of the future month, you just change in that one sheet and every sheet will automatically change. Right? You're getting? So that you don't need to change each and every sheet separately. So these are some small best practices which we used to follow. So if you are not following this, you can start to follow. If you are following this already, it's very good. Okay, and then you are going to do, once you do the labor cost budget like this, the basic pay, then you can identify your social benefits or your other employee benefits. What are going to be my meal allowance, how much I'm going to be the social security. Now here you need to change, here you need to update your budget with respect to your plans. So sometimes the companies change the meal structure. Maybe they want to open, if they are outsourcing, they may want to open their own staff canteen, or if they have their own staff canteen, they may want to change to the outside catering. So the expenses will separate. So you need to understand together with the HR what are the policies, how I'm gonna change, what is going to be changed with respect to HR, right? Maybe you want to make a new uniform, so the uniform will change. So here you can do the uniform budget as well. Even though uniform cost does not go to the labor cost, it's shown into different line, but you can do it the same way because it's the head count is here already. So you don't need to do a uniform budget separately and then link with the head counts again. You can do it the same file, and then this cost you can bring to the your other expenses, which is we are going to do now. Any question on labor cost? Any other way you are doing in your hotel, in your actual practices, or you are doing the same way?
I mean, formulas, because we get for the labor, we get it from HR, HR department, like how much is standard for this we get. So for the expensive, like what you mentioned about laundry was, I think, that.
Uniform or other expenses on training budget or all those kind of things. It depends. It can be linked in this file, and then it can be linked to the other files because it depends on number of employees. So whatever expenses depends on the number of employees. Either you can do it from here or you can consolidate the number of employees in one file for whole hotel or each department and then do it in their individual P&Ls. So there are both ways. You can do it either way. It
Sorry,
depends.
I have a question, but I think I didn't check with our finance team. You know about the CAPEX? CAPEX? This is like from the revenue, we keeping like a percentage for the CAPEX,
Yes,
right?
yes. Normally is done like this. Is certain revenue, certain percentage from the revenue that we allocate in total. How much will be the capex allowed for next year? So that depends on the hotel's individual performance. Usually, in my experience, we allow up to around 2 to 3% of the revenue as a capital expenditure every year. Yeah, every year. Yes, every year. So around 2 to 3%. It depends on the condition of the hotel. If it's a new hotel, you don't need to really spend on capex. So they may not allow anything because you already they just buy. But if it's an old hotel which is running like very old, then they have a normal operating budget is about 2 to 3%, and then they allow some additional budget for renovations. So renovations is separate. I forgot to add the capital